All right, today's video is all about taking the things that we talked about in the last video, which is banking basics, interest rates, and the Federal Reserve, and applying it to a graph. And this graph is called the money market graph. And our learning target today is I can analyze changes in the money supply. So let's dive in. This is what the money market graph looks like. And as you can see, it looks pretty different from our previous graphs. It's a completely new graph. So on the y-axis, we have nominal interest rates. And nominal interest rates are just the interest rates that are charged when people borrow money. It's the cost of borrowing money. And down here, we've got the quantity of money. We label it Q, and up at the top, we label it at MS, and that stands for money supply. So where the money supply meets MD, the money demanded, that is where the quantity of money, how much money there is in the United States, and where the interest rate falls, okay? So a few things on this graph. MS stands for money supply. In the United States, there is a finite amount of money at any given time. At this moment in time, there is quadrillion, million, billion dollars. And two, I don't know. There's a finite amount. It's a huge amount, but there's like at one moment, this is how much money is in the United States. And that's what this graph graphs, okay? And this includes liquid assets. So cash in your pocket, money in your checking account and your savings account, okay? Money demanded, the downward sloping money demanded curve, is the amount of money demanded by U.S. consumers. And then the nominal interest rates, labeled with IR, is the cost of borrowing money. And remember, the lower the rate, that's supposed to say the lower the rate. Good thing I caught that. The lower the rate, the better for the economy, because that generates money. If their rates are lower, people will buy more. People will borrow more and then go stimulate the economy by changing consumer spending and investment spending, okay? So if we increase the money supply, here's what the graph looks like. We would shift that curve, I know we call it a curve, but it's a straight line, to the right, put an arrow, label it Q sub 1 and MS 1, okay? And now where it hits the money demanded curve, there's a new equilibrium point. We labeled that IR sub 1 and indicate that from the old interest rate to the new interest rate, it was a decrease. So if we decrease the interest rate, this stimulates the economy because people take out more loans, okay? What about if we decrease the money supply? If there is less money in the United States, this curve would shift to the left. Indicate that with an arrow. Label it Q sub 1 and MS sub 1, okay? Now where money demanded meets the money supply curve, there is a new interest rate equilibrium. We saw from the old interest rate to the new interest rate, we increased, okay? And this slows down the economy because people will take out less loans and less money will be generated with the money multiplier effect. Less money will be invested, less money will be spent. So how does money supply, the amount of money in the United States, go up or down? Isn't it just always there? Well, the Federal Reserve can change that. Remember, the Federal Reserve stabilizes America's banking system. It's a government entity that stabilizes America's banking system. So they have the power to increase or decrease the money supply through three methods. They can change the reserve requirement. They can change the discount rate, which is the rate at which banks borrow money from the Federal Reserve. And they can buy or sell treasury bonds, which we'll get into in just a second. So let's look at reserve requirement first. Reserve requirement changes the money supply, and we're going to analyze how. Remember, the reserve requirement is the Fed telling banks they have to keep a percentage of their money at all times. And in this class, we use 10% as like the baseline. It hovers around 10%, and it's easy to do the math that way. And then they can loan out the rest. And the reason they do this is just to protect the bank so it doesn't fail. It always has money in it. We're not loaning out everything else. What they don't loan out, they call excess reserves. And it can be, what they don't have to keep is called excess reserves. And that can be loaned out. And the more they loan out, the more profit a bank makes in interest rates. The more people will borrow money to invest in consumer spending or investment spending. The money multiplier effect then happens and it stimulates and grows our economy. Okay? So if we increase the reserve requirement, and we can draw this like this, if we increase the reserve requirement, banks have less money to loan out because we went from, you have to keep 10%, now you have to keep 25%. So you have to keep 25%, you can only loan out 75% of the money that people deposit. So then banks make less profit because they're not loaning out as much, they're not making as much interest rate. This decreases the money supply. We're not creating money with that money multiplier effect if we're loaning out less. And because we decrease the money supply, it actually ends up increasing interest rates. And I'm going to show you on a graph. And if the bank has to keep more because we increase the reserve requirement, that means there's less money to be loaned out for consumers to borrow. And that means that we're not able to increase economic activity. Okay? Decreasing the reserve requirement, and we would write this like this, decreasing the reserve requirement, okay, means that maybe we went from a 10% reserve requirement down to a 7% reserve requirement. And now we can loan out 93% of the money that comes in instead of just 90. And so banks will make more money and turn more profit on interest rates. This will increase the amount of money given out, and consumers can then use it to consume or invest. And this increases economic activity and gets that money multiplier effect going. Okay? So let's graph what this would look like. Here we go. Graph what would occur if the Federal Reserve chose to decrease the reserve requirement. Be sure to describe your answer below. Remember, when we talked about decreasing the reserve requirement, that means that there is more money being loaned out. So increase loans. Okay? If we're increasing loans, that means more money is being put out into the economy. This is increasing the money supply. So let's draw it on the graph. When we increase the money supply, label it MS1, give me an arrow. And now where is the new equilibrium with MS1 and MD? It's right here. So we draw over to here, label that IR1. And from the old interest rate to the new interest rate, we went down, so put a downward shifting arrow. So what happened when we increased the money supply? More people started taking out loans. Interest rates went down. When interest rates go down, that means we're going to increase borrowing. And that means we're going to increase economic activity. So these are just like the domino effect of the money supply increasing. Let's see what would happen if we chose to increase the reserve requirement. So graph what would occur if the Federal Reserve chose to increase. So increase reserve requirement leads to less loans because the bank can't loan out as much as they want to. So if we're decreasing the amount of loans, that leads to the decreased amount of money available to consumers. That decreases the money supply. So let's graph that. Label it MS1. Give me an arrow. Okay, our new equilibrium hits right here. Label that interest rate 1. From our old interest rate to our new, it looks like interest rates went up. So interest rates went up. And when interest rates go up, that means we're going to decrease the amount of borrowing. And decreased borrowing means decreased economic activity. All right, here we go. Next thing we're going to talk about, the second thing the Federal Reserve can do to change the money supply is the discount rate. And the discount rate, remember, is the rate at which the federal government charges banks to borrow money. And banks don't just absorb that cost, they raise their own interest rates when they're loaning out money to consumers in order to make up for the cost of the discount rate for them to borrow money from the Federal Reserve. So if we increase the discount rate, when the Federal Reserve increases the discount rate, that means that private banks now have been charged more to borrow money, so they're going to charge their consumers more to make up the cost. So the higher the discount rate, then the less people will take out loans and less economic activity is generated. That will decrease the money supply because we're decreasing the money being loaned out, decreasing the money multiplier effect, and that raises interest rates. The opposite of that happens when we decrease the discount rate. Oh, and I'm sorry, I should be doing this. When we decrease the discount rate, okay, private banks decrease private interest rates. So that makes interest rates go down. The lower the discount rate, the more people take out loans. We increase loans, and then more economic activity is generated. This increases the money supply and decreases interest rates. Let's see it on a graph, friends. So here we go. Graph what would occur if the Federal Reserve chose to decrease the discount rate. If we decrease the discount rate, that means that banks are charging less on their private interest on their private loans for interest rates. So interest rates actually end up going down, which means we're going to increase loans, okay? All of this increases the money supply. Oops, sorry. So when we increase the money supply, we shift it to the right. Give me an arrow, label it MS1, label it Q1. We have a new equilibrium. Label that IR1. Looks like interest rates went down, which we already knew was going to happen here. If interest rates go down and more people are taking out loans, more people are borrowing, this increases economic activity. All right, let's look at the opposite. I lied. We're not looking at the opposite. Sorry about that. All right, last one. Let's look at open market operations. Open market operations is probably the most difficult of the three things the Federal Reserve can do. Open market operations is when the Federal Reserve buys or sells U.S. Treasury bonds. And you might be saying, what is a Treasury bond? Sometimes a Treasury bond is called a Treasury security. So another name for securities is bonds. So use those interchangeably, okay? So a bond or a security is a loan and also an investment. So we're going to look at it specifically when it comes to the United States. The Federal Reserve will give someone a piece of paper that says you bought this for X amount. In 10, 20, 30 years, it will appreciate in value. That means grow in value, and it will be worth that amount that you paid for it plus more in interest. So it is actually an investment. It's a piece of paper that's an investment. And it's a fixed rate of return. So you invested this year. If you wait 15 years, it will appreciate and you will make what you invested plus more. And it is a very safe way to invest, okay? It's not risky at all. You earn less than if you invested that money in stocks because the money is government guaranteed. You're going to get all your money back plus some more, even though the interest rates are lower on bonds, but it's guaranteed, okay? U.S. Treasury security is just an example of a U.S. government bond. And it's basically the government sells bonds to people, sells these pieces of paper and takes their money and says, we will pay you back plus more at the end of this loan, okay? They're also kind of traded between banks because they're worth money, but a lot of people invest in bonds, and the federal government, the Federal Reserve, will go through periods of buying bonds from people every certain number of years when they have appreciating value, and selling bonds, giving out those pieces of paper that say it will be worth more later, okay? So if the Federal Reserve buys bonds from the U.S. citizens, they increase the amount of cash in the money supply. So that means that little piece of paper, it's a bond. I'm going to put a B for bond, okay? That little piece of paper is being bought. Little Joe Schmo here had the piece of paper. This is his, okay? And the Federal Reserve over here takes it, buy, and gives Joe Schmo cash. Now Joe Schmo has cash, and that increases the money supply. See how that works? All right, let's do the opposite. If the federal government sells bonds, so this bond belongs to the Fed, Joe Schmo wants it, okay? Joe Schmo buys the bond, it belongs to him now, and he gives money to the federal government, to the Fed, the Federal Reserve. Now there's less money out here in the supply of money, and this decreases the money supply. And we'll see what that looks like on a graph here in a second. So let's go ahead and graph it. Graph what would occur if the Federal Reserve chose to buy bonds in open market operations. So if the Federal Reserve is buying bonds, they are taking up those pieces of paper and giving out cash. That means that, remember Joe Schmo, who now is selling his bond to the United States government, the Fed, gives him money. That increases our money supply. So increase money supply. And when that happens, we have a new interest rate and it goes down. So our money supply increased, our interest rate decreased. When interest rates decrease, that means more people are going to borrow, increase the loans being loaned out, and that will increase economic activity. All because the federal government bought bonds in open market operations. If they sell bonds in open market operations, the opposite will happen. So the federal government is going to take up money and give to those who have invested in bonds that piece of paper that will appreciate over time. So the Federal Reserve takes in money off of the market, off of the money supply. This decreases the money supply. Okay, so we're decreasing the money supply. That means we shift it to the left. Label it MS sub 1. Give me an arrow. Okay, we've got a new interest rate now. Looks like it went up. If interest rates increase, oh my gosh, that was awful. If interest rates increase, that leads to a decrease in loans. And if less people are borrowing money, that decreases our economic activity. All right, so that is the basics about the reserve requirement, the discount rate, and open market operations. We will be applying all of those things in the next video about monetary policy.